So it's being recorded from now on, and we are going to discuss a movie, Heart of a Dog, based on a novel by Mikhail Bulgakov. So, guys, I wanted to mm, first of all, Hati, I told you about this group which deals with like ancient Christian teachings, and lots of those teachings were uncovered by a man called George Gurdjieff. Have you ever heard about him?
No.
Okay, so this group actually, and Mariam, you obviously heard about him, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Now, lots of teachings of George Gurdjieff are presented in this book, In Search of the Miraculous, by P.D. Uspensky, which was one of his students. And the subject that relates to this movie is about essence and personality. So essence and personality. So right now, I just want to read to you a quote from this book, because, and then after watching the movie, we are going to see how these particular principles applies to what we are going to watch in this movie. Now, Mariam, so have you ever encountered those terms, essence and personality, in the fourth way teaching?
Yes, I have read the book, and then yes,
Very good.
I know about essence and personality. And
yeah. So what do you remember from this subject? Because actually, I chose this movie because one of the principles of this teachings that it illustrates is this essence, because it talks about a professor who took a dog, actually. So we had the essence of a dog, and he combined him with a human. Like he basically put a pituitary gland and some other glands of a human being into the dog as a part of his experiments, and then we will see what happened later on. So we had this essence of a dog and personality of a human being, of a very, very low rank human being. But what do you remember about those terms of essence and personality?
yes, I think that essence is something that we are born with it, but during our life, with the training of the parents and the school and the society, we are going to have personality, and it is something that given us, it changes the what is it? It changes us even in a wrong way, and then when we get awakened, we should change. We should come back to our essence. But something that I learned about myself when I learned the term, I learned that I have read in the Search of the Miraculous, but in the same time I learned that I learned myself, it is not only from the book, I learned that we should also develop the essence. Otherwise, we are not going to, we should get grown up in a new way, not the way that we have been. Otherwise, we are going to stay like a child. And then one thing that I learned about myself, it is good that we have a personality, but sometimes our personalities have not developed in a good way. It should we should also our personality even wrong when it is developed and we have personalities. It is good. It is better than that we stay in a childhood, in a very low low part of the essence. I don't know how to say.
Yeah. So basically, the idea that for the inner work, for the productive inner work, we have to have both developed. We have to develop our essence, which is something that it's innate, that we born with, kind of our basic wishes, basic desires, and also personality, which is actually culture. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm going just to read to you, and then so Hati, because you are less familiar with those teachings, and then we'll get to the movie. You will see how it applies. It's one of the principles. There are some other principles as well. So it's from the book In Search of the Miraculous, and this is the P.D. Ouspensky. He talks about one of the Gurdjieff's lectures, and then so Gurdjieff says, it must be understood that man consists of two parts, essence and personality. Essence in man is what is his own. Personality in man is what is not his own. Not his own means what has come from outside, from what he has learned, or reflects all traces of exterior impressions left in the memory and in the sensations, all words and movements that have been learned, all feelings created by imitation. All this is not his own, quote unquote. All this is personality. From the point of view of ordinary psychology, the division of man into personality and essence is hardly comprehensible. It is more exact to say that such a division does not exist in psychology at all. A small child has no personality as yet. He is what he really is, his essence, his desires, tastes, likes, dislikes, express his being such as it is. But as soon as so-called education, quote unquote, begins, personality begins to grow. Personality is created partly by intentional influences of other people, that is by education, and partly by involuntary imitation of them by the child itself. In the creation of personality, a great part is also played by resistance to people around him and by attempts to conceal from them something that is his own or real, quote unquote. Yeah, I can see it. I have a 3-year-old daughter. She's now discovering this thing of how to say no, and this is mine, this is not yours, you cannot use it. So she's discovering it now. So then it's all part of her forming personality. So we have essence and we have personality. Then so but and then I skip a little bit, and then he says, but in proportion, actually he says, essence is the truth in man, personality is the false. But in proportion as personality grows, essence manifests itself more and more rarely and more feebly. And it very often happens that essence stops in its growth at a very early age and grows no further. It happens very often that the essence of grown-up men, even that of the very intellectual, and in the accepted meaning of the word highly educated man, stops on the level of a child of 5 or 6. Yeah, so Mariam, so could you give an example from your experience of someone who might be well educated, who has lots of personality but kind of weak essence, like whatever it tells you.
Yeah, I think that now I can say about myself mostly because I felt it. I think many times we read the things, but we don't understand it. But I think that after reading this, in the search of miraculous, I noticed that I have been one part of me. For instance, I have not developed myself. I have been because of the situation that I have had in my family. There have been many children, and then I have not been educated, not educated. I don't know, ordered by my parents, and I have done the things myself. And then I am not like the other people that behave accordingly what the society says or parents say. And I noticed that the way that I was, it was not good. It is good that it should be grown, it should be educated, but maybe it was good because I could educate myself in a better way, in a, I don't know, I cannot, I don't know how to say it, but it was more pure than the people who are in a mold, they are in a frame. But anyway, I think that it is about me, myself. But I can see many people who are many people who have very high education, but they obey the others. They do what the other people say. They don't decide. They cannot think. It is not all. It is not all their centers who decide. Usually, we decide with our emotion or with our intellect or with our instinct. And all of them don't coordinate with each other. It is what Gurdjieff says, that a person is like what is it?
A machine, a machine.
People are like machines, but all the centers. There should be a bus in the body to move this machine. But usually there is not any bus. It is our emotions. It is our senses, or it is our only thinking, which is conditioned by the parents, leads us. It is why.
Mariam, we kind of lost you.
Higher self. This they don't decide with the higher self, with their real I.
Yes, absolutely. Hati, have you ever encountered such division in any particular teaching or any philosophy that you inquired about essence, something that a person is born with, and a personality which is like cultural influences?
I did. I can't remember the book that I read at one time that talked about it, but I can see that concept being a reality. It's one of the things that I notice all the time, particularly when I moved out of the country and lived out of the United States, for a number of years. I began to see that a lot of what we say is who we are is actually our conditioning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And then there is just a little more quote, and then we'll get to the movie. And then so he says, this means that everything we see in this man. So he is talking about people who have like a very cultural man, cultural educated man, but with a weak person, with a weak essence. So everything we see in this man is in reality not his own. What is his own in man, that is his essence, is usually only manifested in his instincts and in his simplest emotions. Like he's talking about cases when essence is not developed. There are cases, however, when a man's essence grows in parallel with his personality. Such cases represent very rare exceptions, especially in the circumstances of cultured life. Essence has more chances of development in men who live nearer to nature in difficult conditions of constant struggle and danger. Okay, now Mariam, so how do you understand this concept? So that essence has more chances to be developed in people who live nearer to nature and in difficult conditions of constant struggle and danger. So why do you think their essence has more chances to be developed?
Yeah, I believe that first of all, you said that the people who encounter the danger and also the people who live in the nature. For me, myself, I have encountered the danger because of the situation I have had in the life. And I don't know how much my essence has developed. Since I have learned about Gurdjieff and since I have learned about mysticism, I have started watching myself. Before that, I didn't know anything. And one more thing that I have learned. Now I am in Europe. In Europe, people are very much more conditioned than the people who live in the East. It is what I think. They are. It is low. It is really, really interesting for me. You know, very soon I got the here's culture, and I'm really happy that I have moved to a new country because I can see the difference, and I can see how much people are conditioned, and I have been teaching in the school, and it is again very interesting because I can see how the school, even in the primary school, not primary, it is in the kindergarten, they educate the people to obey the law. And it is why it is really, I'm really sorry for the children here, how they don't know. People blindly obey the rules.
Yeah.
It is much more than the for instance, the third world countries. In those countries there is no law, but here the laws are very, very much studied how to make the people obey them.
Yeah.
This is what I have learned.
Absolutely. So you are, and you're coming from Iran, right? Originally.
Iran,
Iran.
Persia.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it looks to me that in terms of essence, like Iranian people has much, in general, have much more essence developed than European people. Like, what do you think about that? Would you say it like that?
I agree with it because I think the Europeans they try to steal essence.
Hear me.
They steal it, you know. But I think that there are certain things that are innate in us, and I think that the essence, I don't know if it's the same thing as being just innate characteristics about, you know, certain people that are just there, no matter where they live. There's certain things that are just there.
For a few minutes, you were disconnected.
Yeah, Hachi, so could you please repeat what you have said, just in short?
Okay, I'm sorry. I said that to me, the Europeans attempt to steal essence because, and I say that laughingly, but I think that they do. But I also think that, to me, as you say, essence, to me, I think of innate capacity of people, you know, or innate characteristics or innate.
Exactly.
Yes, but still, there are certain things that are innate in people, regardless of where they live. They still carry, you know, a certain essence, basically associated, in my thinking, with I don't want to say nationality or something, you know, but there's certain things that are just there, no matter what.
Mariam, so what do you think?
I was disconnected, and then being close to the nature. I also believe when people are close to nature. One good thing is Sweden, I am very close to the nature. When I was in Iran, I was living in the city and very far from the nature. I can see how much I see the details, how I can feel. Maybe it is also I have changed since I have come to Europe because of it is not it is you, I think you yourself also have experience. You have been an immigrant in the other.
Yeah.
Well,
when one moves to a new country, I think that all you lose everything. All your ego is going to be you lose your money, your education, your friends, and everything.
Yeah.
Can you hear?
Yeah, sure.
And then you should make a new personality. Many people get crazy. They start taking tablets, and if they don't change them, but adapt themselves. And then I think that it was after that, I think when I came to Sweden, I noticed that, I found myself. My life changed. And
Yes.
then I think that now after that I can see I am the one with the nature. I am one with the animals, with the even when I see a worm on the ground, I can see we are the same. There is no difference between me and nature, and everything is the same. And I think it is something that happens to everybody. It is
Yeah.
when people are close to the nature.
Yeah, Mariam, and it's the part, in my opinion, it's the part of well-developed essence, you know, because it's not the culture, you know, it's the essence, like you really feel, it's the feeling, it's the essence, yeah, but it's the essence of well-developed essence when you really feel like oneness with nature, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For it happens for it is very very short time, maybe 1 second. It has happened to me. It is not all the time. All of a sudden, something like revolution. I really feel. I think I see myself above everything, and it is some very special experience. I think that I can talk with the nature. I can talk with the trees. I can really, it is a really, I think it's also being close to the nature. For instance, yesterday I was in the forest, and it is really, I feel myself the same with everything, with
Wow.
the trees, with the, yeah, I think maybe the people who live near the nature feel like this, but they should also have changed a little bit their
Mm-hmm.
inner self. Yeah, otherwise
Yeah. Hattie, you wanted to say something before, so please, what did you want to say?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I lived in the bush for 3 years with getting my water from the river, living in a mud hut, using the latrine, taking a shower outside, just really living just like the people that I was, in the village that I was in. And I would say that, living in the nature like that, I seem to, come to a different understanding of myself. And, I seem to garner, more self-respect, more confidence. I was able to, communicate in a non-verbal manner, just having how you can communicate just by, I don't know how to explain it, but, my communication changed. That was my favorite time. I was in Liberia, but my 3 years in the bush was my favorite time. It's the time I enjoyed the most. Although I didn't grow up on a farm, I was not familiar with any of these things that I was doing, but I loved it.
Wow, that is so inspiring. And where was it? Was it in the States?
No, I was in Liberia, West Africa.
Ah, okay.
So
That, that,
I stayed there a total of 20 years, but the first 3 years I was in the bush.
okay. And were there other people around as well, or you were kind of secluded?
No, I lived with the nationals, who lived in the village as well.
Yes, yes. Wow, that's amazing. And was it before you came to the States, or it was after you came to the States, you just went back to went back to Liberia?
No, I'm an American. I was born here.
Ah,
And so
okay.
when I went to Liberia, I was like 40 years old. So I had, been pretty ingrained in the American culture, the American way of,
Wow.
American. I went there as a Christian missionary.
I see. Wow. That is great. That is great. Wow, that is so inspiring. Okay, guys, so I will just finish the quote and then we will get to the movie. Mm, so he says that there are some cases every now and when personality develops together with essence. And then he says, as I said, essence has more chances of development in men who live nearer to nature in difficult conditions or of constant struggle and danger. But as a rule, the personality of such people is very little developed. They have more of what is their own, but very little of what is not their own, that is to say. They like education and instruction. They like culture. So what he wants to say is that both of them are needed. Essence is needed and personality is needed. And then I skip, and he says a very important moment in the work on oneself is when a man begins to distinguish between his personality and his essence. A man's real I, his individuality, can grow only from his essence. It can be said that a man's individuality is his essence, grown up, mature. But in order to enable essence to grow up, it is first of all necessary to weaken the constant pressure of personality upon it, because the obstacles to the growth of essence are contained in personality. So in other words, if a person always identifies with his, society and his job and his name and everything, then essence has no place to grow. Okay, yeah. So what do you think? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I believe that this personality is very much necessary. Without personality, it is not possible to grow the essence. And I believe also personality is the ego. And usually we talk, one thing that I have again learned about myself, I knew many things, but I had not practiced. We should practice, and we should try to, for instance, lying. We should not tell lies. We should see when we tell lie. We should watch ourselves all the time. We should observe ourselves. And I learned again one thing during the meditation. I watch myself all the time, but then I have learned to watch myself during the day. Meditation, I think meditation is only for a short time, and the aim of the meditation is to be watchful and to be awake all the time in the daily life, not only.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, meditation doesn't have any meaning. It is what I have learned.
Yeah, Hati, and I think that's exactly what is said in scriptures, right? Like to be awake, to be there. There are also parables talking about that, about being awake, being watchful, to kind of watch your thoughts, and right, like what do you think about that?
Yes, it says that. It says to to separate yourself from these things that can have a greater influence on your decision making, on your thought processes. It is definitely one of the foundations of Christianity. I also find in my own personal life that I myself have been pulling away from these mindsets that you're talking of, because I now I find it very irritating now when I'm around people who put such what's that on the word, such weight on where they work, where they live, what they have, the material things they have.
Right. Yeah, and then so that's really towards the end, and so then he says, if we take an average cultured man, we shall see that in the vast majority of cases, his personality is the active element in him, while his essence is the passive element. Okay, so essence is passive, only personality is active. The inner growth of a man cannot begin so long as this order of things remains unchanged. Personality must become passive, and essence must become active. This can happen only if buffers are removed. Buffers, Mariam, do you remember this term, buffers, from the...
Yeah, I know about the buffer. I know what about. Usually they are buffers they stop us from changing.
Yeah, buffers are just different false ideas that we think about ourselves, so that we feel good with ourselves, like all kinds of justifications, why we did so, why it's okay to do what we do, and stuff like that. So buffers, it's like something that softens the friction, something that doesn't actually let us see ourselves as we are, different kinds of excuses and stuff like that. And then he says, a essence can start develop, like he says, this can happen only if buffers are removed or weakened, because buffers are the chief weapon by the help of which personality holds essence in subjection. So basically, by all these justifications and false ideas about ourselves. As has been said earlier, in the case of less cultured people, essence is often more highly developed than it is in cultured men. It would seem that they ought to be nearer the possibility of growth, but in reality, it is not so, because their personality proves to be insufficiently developed. For inner growth, for work on oneself, a certain development of personality, as well as a certain strength of essence, are necessary. So basically, personality and essence. Now, Hati, when you were working there in as a missionary, have you encountered people? Maybe yes, maybe not. I'm just asking that kind of whose essence was good enough, for example, to accept Christianity, but because of their kind of cultural background or education or something like that, because of like they were lacking this kind of something that is not there, something of some kind of cultural influence in order to really start thinking in Christian terms. Have you encountered anything like that?
I'm not really sure what you're asking me. Can you ask it again?
Yeah, because we talked about essence and personality. Now, you said that you were a missionary, right?
Yes.
So you probably you probably encountered lots of people from villages, right? Like from like rural areas, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. So those people who kind of probably live close to nature and have quite difficult lives, so probably their essence was quite developed. So they were kind of developed emotionally, you might say. Yeah. But for your missionary work, have you ever felt that some of those people kind of lack kind of cultural background or intellectual background to accept the ideas that you were trying to tell them?
Well, no, not in Africa, because they already have a sense of a higher being.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have, they don't have a hard time embracing someone greater, a creator,
Uh-huh.
Someone who would sacrifice their lives for them, on the cross. It's not really wasn't that foreign to them. So, and the culture, actually, that is the culture. The culture is that, there is a God,
Yes. Yes, but could you convey those ideas to them easily, or it or you had difficulties conveying those ideas to those rural people?
No, the ideas were not hard. The only thing was some of the biblical doctrines, were kind of hard. Like for example, let's say if a man had, several wives,
Yeah.
So with those kind of things that had issues that needed to be addressed more so than anything else. So the cultural norms, were rubbing against.
Okay. Okay, guys. So I think we'll start with the movie. I'm just going to share the screen with you, but so this and after that, I'm going to stop a few times throughout the movie, because the idea behind those movies is that we actually watch a little bit and then we discuss. Now, Mariam, have you listened to the video, to the explanation video that I sent, so just to get a little bit of a cultural background about this movie?
Yes, I have, and I have even read a little bit more than what you sent.
Oh, excellent. So something that you found on YouTube?
I searched on Google, and then even on Telegram, there is a Iranian group that shares all the films. I have the film, but I have not watched it yet.
Ah, okay. Okay, very good, very good. So, so just for you to know, it takes place. The setting of the story, like the time and the place, is Russia after the Russian Revolution, and then so we have we can see all those influences of communism. You will see it, conditions people lived in. Now the movie starts with like it's as if the dog they're showing the dog, this dog that which is actually the main character in the movie. So and it starts with kind of his thoughts, what he's thinking about the situation before he becomes human. And then we have this professor, and his name is Professor Preobrazhensky. Now Preobrazhensky, I just want to clarify, in Russian it comes from the root of changing, like preobrazhat means to change. And this professor, actually, in his daily life, he's a very intelligent man. So we might say that his personality is really developed. We don't know much about his essence, but he is doing a little bit of unethical things in his practice. Basically, he implants glands of animals to humans in order to rejuvenate humans, in order to, for example, in order to raise their sexual, their ability to have sex and other things. Not very ethical. But he also likes to experiment, and actually, these kinds of experiments were held in Russia in reality at that time. And then he takes, you will see it, he takes this dog, and for the experiment, he implants to this dog certain organs of a human being, certain like brain parts or something like that, in order to rejuvenate the dog. But something gets wrong, and this dog becomes a man, becomes a person. And then, so in terms of the essence and personality, then we get this dog essence in this creature, dog essence. But then we have the personality of that dead person whose pituitary gland was implanted to this dog, which is also a person of a very, very low level, some kind of a drunkard who was killed in a fight or something like that. And then we see, okay, and then I'm not going to tell you what happened next, you will see it. But the first part of the movie is actually just the atmosphere of a post-revolutionary Russia and stuff like that. And this movie is intentionally made with black and white because just to depict the atmosphere better. And I think that you will enjoy it. It has lots of, and I will stop few times throughout the movie, and then we will discuss what we have seen, and then we will proceed on. Okay, guys, so I can see that we have few more people. Hey, Pete.
Hello there, I'm here.
Very good that you came. Hello, we also have Michael. Moment. Good. So we have just Pete. So just for you to know, we started not long time ago because we had a long discussion about essence and personality, about this subject. So we discussed it, and I read a quote from In Search of the Miraculous. So you haven't missed a lot, something like 15 minutes. So we'll just easily tell you what happened there, and then you will be, you will understand everything. Yeah, and also you, Mike, how are you doing?
Sorry, I was muted there. Yeah, fine, Arik. How are you?
Very good, very good. Okay, guys, so as I said, we started about 20 minutes ago, between 15 and 20 minutes ago with the movie itself. Before that, we discussed the subject of essence and personality, and actually we haven't got in the movie to that part yet where it will be applicable. So just for people who joined later, I just want to say that in the first part of the movie was narrated by a dog, actually, by a dog. And this dog in the future is going to become a very interesting creature, which is kind of a dog in a man form. But for now, we just saw the dog that was injured. And then this dog was thought that it would die in a few days, but then there was this Professor Preobrazhensky, which is kind of represents kind of an old Russia, you know, because this movie happens like few years after the revolution. But this professor, because he is like a world-class professor, like he was able to remain and to practice his old way. But this professor himself is doing a little bit unethical things, as you could notice. Like he puts animal glands into humans in order to rejuvenate them. Now, guys, so what do you think about the character of this professor, especially people who watched from the beginning, like Mariam and Hati? What do you think about this main character, this professor, about his personality and what he is doing? Okay. Mariam, Hati?
They might not realize they're muted, Arik.
Yeah, it might be. Anyway, Michael, and did you watch it from the beginning or you just joined a few minutes after?
Well, I think so, Arik. Sorry, it was my mistake. I thought it started at 8 UK time or Irish time.
I see.
Was it actually 7?
Yeah, it was 7. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, I didn't check. I just assumed that was my. But I don't think we missed more than probably a minute.
Yeah. So, Michael, so what do you think about this character of this Professor Preobrazhensky? By the way, I explained before the movie that Preobrazhensky in Russian, Preobrazhat, like this, the root of the word means to change. So, and the name of the dog is Sharik, and it's also significant. You will see as the movie proceeds. Sharik basically means a ball. So usually you would call a Sharik a dog, you know, who is kind of fat and stuff like that. But you will see. But it does have some significance in the future. So what do you think about this main character, which is Professor Preobrazhensky?
Difficult to say, really. It's early days, isn't it? Typical sort of doctor, you know, kind of a little bit full of himself, and you know, I don't know really. It's hard to say at this stage.
Yeah. So, Peter, do you have any ideas about what we have just seen?
I literally saw about 30 seconds of the movie
before
we got into it. So
yeah.
no.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so we'll just continue. So, Pete, for you to know that was this professor, and he took this stray dog into his apartment. We don't know yet what for. And this professor took this dog when he received his patient, and then there was one guy who probably was implanted some kind of gland from some kind of an animal, and now he's able to have lots of sex, basically. And then there was another woman who also wanted to have an affair, and she was about to be implanted the monkey glands in order to rejuvenate her to have this affair. So basically, we can, this professor has kind of a questionable activity, but I explained that these kind of experiments were actually held in Russia at that time. So it's not a science fiction, like and actually the communist regime was kind of even interested in this kind of experiment in order to create kind of a new man, to rejuvenate people on a massive basis. So okay, so let's just continue. Let's just continue watching. I will stop the recording and we will watch another like 20-25 minutes. Then we stop and discuss. Okay, guys. So it's gonna be a really short break. I just wanted to say that now we can understand better the conditions through which Gurdjieff and Uspensky under which Gurdjieff and Uspensky had to work in the time of the revolution. Like we can see all this mass insanity that happened at that time. So what do you think about that?
Arik, when is it? Is it set in 1917 or 1918? Is it?
Yeah. The revolution happened in 1917. This movie takes place in 1925. So there was the civil war in Russia after the revolution, or more or less the time of the revolution. There was Red Army and a White Army fighting. So Red Army obviously won. But this particular during the 1920s, there was Lenin introduced something that was called new economic policy, which was a little bit more liberal. So because right after the revolution, the idea probably was so that everything belongs to the state and stuff like that. But during the 1920s, there was a little stretch of time where people were allowed to have their own practices and businesses and stuff like that. And therefore, this assistant of the doctor says that now things have changed quite dramatically. So what he means is that now people are more allowed. I think it was stopped a few years later on. But at that stretch of time, there was some kind of a little bit more economical freedom at least. But there was still lots of craziness going on, like taking leaving space from people, as you saw, and stuff like that.
But wouldn't it have been immediately after the revolution classified as a bourgeois and killed? You know, it seems amazing that he survived.
Yeah. He survived just because he was a kind of a world-class professor, and lots of people of this kind left Russia. So probably the new government, and actually he was. We can also see that he was in touch. He was actually helping and operating and treating government officials, because we saw that when those guys came to take 2 rooms from him, he called this guy who was probably a very, very high official authority, and then he told Schwander, which was the head of the House Committee, to leave him alone. So just because of that. Otherwise, I guess he would either persecuted or just thrown out of the country. Yeah. But that's the idea, basically, that we can see kind of a part of old pre-revolutionary Russia here in his apartment or in this particular building.
Yeah.
Pete, so do you have any idea so far? Actually, the main plot hasn't started yet. We could say that now it's more or less the background, but actually now, like in the next few minutes, the main line of plot is going to start. But as for now, Pete, do you have any ideas or any thoughts about what we have seen? And it may be something, how it might relate to, because now we also live in crazy times. We talked about it in the last meeting. So we can see the patterns, like the content is different, but we can pretty much see the same patterns, in my opinion, of what's happening now in many instances.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the guy who inspired me to really start on my journey, Charles Ashton, was basically on the hit list by the communists in Yugoslavia in World War II. So I feel very strongly about these issues. I thought that the whole issue of atheism was interesting here in this little segment. He talked about you can't have 2 gods, and officially communism is atheist, but really isn't. And so, hold on. Are you guys still there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can hear.
I've lost my screen. So anyway, I just thought it was fascinating. I'm interested to see the rest of the plot take place here.
Yes, absolutely. Anything else, Mariam, Hati, so far? Do you have any ideas? Franco?
I can only say it is more from feeling it, a feeling of what suffocating times it must have been. And when you're thinking about Gurdjieff and Pete, you just mentioned Charles Ashton. At the drop of a hat, you could be, pulled away and sent somewhere or killed, what have you. But obviously this man is connected, and it all, to me, it just sort of felt there was this sort of hint of, you know, obvious kind of hypocrisy going on there, because, you know, everyone should be equal. No, so they're my thoughts so far.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, guys, so let's continue. Let's continue. So I'm stopping the recording now. No, I record the discussions and then I stop the recording when there is a movie, because we actually post on YouTube the discussion itself.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why every time there is a discussion, there is a stop. Then we just yeah. And Hati, so Peter, so we are going to talk about it later, but Hati was interested to hear more about the group and ancient Christianity, and because Hati was a missionary in Hati has a very interesting story. We're going to talk about it later.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm looking forward to getting to meet you, Hattie. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Hati, are you enjoying the movie so far?
Yes, I am.
Very good, very good. So let's continue. So that was the end of the first part. So what do you think, guys? What do you think about what we have just seen?
It seems very similar to the American Frankenstein. Well, it wasn't American. Who actually made that movie? Or wrote the book?
Is that the one with Robert De Niro?
I don't know who acted it, and I read the book.
Oh,
I remember.
okay. That's Mary Shelley. That's a British author.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So in terms of the work ideas, the spiritual work ideas, I think that we have here the essence of the dog and the personality of this very, very like low-class individual, Klim Chugunking, which was kind of a drunkard and you know, who was killed in the fight. So because that's basically what we see here. Yeah, Mariam. So what do you think? Mariam? Yeah, guys. So Pete, what do you think? What's your impression?
I believe that the dog before the operation was the essence, and since it was given a name, it started to get personality, and then obeying the doctor, and I mean even that obeying the doctor and learning.
I thought something similar. I thought similar about the dog, but then the dog destroyed the owl, and the owl is always, you know, for me is considered sort of a creature that sits still and is always kind of watching.
That's an
Couldn't
interesting
tell
idea.
who he was acting out of, because the person whose heart was placed in him, is that the way it went? He was a street man, and the dog lived in the street. So the comments that he was just making when he was singing the song, I couldn't tell the origin of that song. Who did it actually come from? The dog, or did it come from the man that was killed, who was he was a bum in the street?
Yes, it came from the man, because the man's profession, they said it was to play balalaika, which is this kind of string instrument in pubs. So it came from the man.
The words came from the man. Okay.
Yeah, the song, you mean? Yeah, and it's a very, very like low level song. If you understand Russian, it's just you cannot go down more down than that. Yeah, Pete, and what do you think? What was your impression?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't here for the original discussion with essence and personality, but it's just going to be interesting to see the rest of it, to see, you know, who wins out in terms of essence or personality. So, yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, good, good.
It also makes me angry because man is continually trying to be God. And so to me, this is another example.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, that's one of the you will see actually in the second part of the movie, this professor gets to this realization that he went too much. But yeah, and if you actually see, if you saw, people called him the creator. You know, you are the creator. So it's a kind of, you know, it depicts kind of, you know, idealization of science, in my opinion. You know, and it might easily go too far, especially
Yeah, I
when
mean,
we. Mhm.
it is an arrogant, it's like a playing God, isn't it? And it's interesting that if you think of the two regimes, we talk about, you know, communism is meant to be this kind of atheist regime, and then he represents something from kind of be pre that regime. God is on his lips quite often. Him and his doctor, they use the word God, um, and yet he is almost supporting this idea of no God at the same time, because he has become this a god for himself, a creator himself, isn't he? So
Yeah.
it's definitely interesting from that point. I'm really enjoying it, actually.
Yeah. So, and also I noticed like in his apartment there is quite strong, in my opinion, like spirit of materialism. Like you don't have any like spiritual things there. It's all, you know, like matter and science and stuff like that. So it might be, you know, might show his mindset, kind of quite materialistic mindset, that we can just do whatever we want, basically. Like put like take a woman, put her glands of a monkey for her to have better sex. Why not? You know?
Yeah, so it's kind of outside in as opposed to inside out, isn't it? It's transformation from the outside, thinking if you can control everything, like from that direction, rather than something that comes from within.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, guys. So let's continue. Let's see. So we're not going to stop during the second part because it's like the line of the plot is pretty much like no need to stop anywhere. So it's about another hour, and then we are going to have a discussion. So let's continue. Okay, guys.
So are they saying that they removed the pituitary gland and he turned back into a dog?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the solution they found. Yeah. Yeah. So guys, please share your thoughts. What do you think about the movie? What do you think about the ideas of it?
I thought it was awesome. All the movies you picked out so far, I thought had some really fascinating esoteric ideas at the basis of them, and I just thought this was great. I mean, these is you could read this like these all everybody else but the dog were like advanced. They had advanced, and they were playing God though, and they were creating this they were creating this creature, and how difficult it is to so this guy who turns into well, this dog who turns into a guy is I find the parallels with us, like who we are in terms
Mm-hmm.
of who we are as animals trying so the guy is, you know, they're trying to turn him into a civilized being, and how difficult it is, and how difficult it is for us to turn into civilized beings. I just find that fascinating, and a lot of parallels with what the work that I'm interested in, and really trying to evolve. I mean, it really is about evolution, atheism, playing God, a lot of fascinating stuff here. So I got a lot out of it.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, today when I was thinking about the discussion, I was also thinking about in the same line as you mentioned. So, because for beings of higher level, we are like Sharikov, like it's a very very crude, very raw, very rough. So it gives the perspective. It's a brilliant perspective, like to see where we are right now towards the higher beings, and where
Like how he was just like trying to say, just sit at the table, stop drinking vodka, and just mind your manners, and don't mess up the bathroom. I just, it's like it's got to be how God is with me in terms of like just stop daydreaming, stop being stop being mean spirited to people who are mean to you, be loving, do this. Just why can't you just do this? And I could just see God going, oh my gosh, Pete is at it again. Here he is. He's going back. He's reverting back. And this idea of atavism too. I love that idea of atavism, where that was the excuse. He's like, well, these are just traits that genetically had just been dormant, and now they're coming back. And I thought that was pretty nice at the very end with the atavistic stuff. So
yes, absolutely. So Pete, I'm just interested in your opinion. If they wanted to develop this being further and not to reverse him into a dog, in your opinion, what would be the best strategy for them to do that? Because he had this dog essence basically,
right.
and this human personality of a very very low kind. So what could they do that, do you think? Because Professor Preobrazhensky said they couldn't, like he couldn't see that.
Right. All right, and that's the question, because it's an artificial implant into his pituitary, right? So it's artificial. So the question is with us, there's a kind of a pessimistic look on it in terms of the parallels. Do we have something artificial in us that is godlike, or do we have something that is innate that we're born with? Now, Scripture talks about us having something innate, the logos, that can be developed, that is natural, that's not implanted, whether it's by an alien or whatever, but it is something that we are all born with, that we are born with. It's, the esoteric fathers call it a birthright, that we are born with this. And Scripture, even the Old Testament, talks about how we are born, and the Psalms talk about, God knew us before we were born. And so, yeah, I think that in the movie is basically saying that's not possible for that artificial creation of a divine higher being. I think that's impossible in this movie. But with us, it's a great question. Like, can we advance? Can we evolve? Saints have done it, but can normal people? That's why we're doing the fourth way. Can normal people evolve? And that's just a fascinating question. The movie says no, I think. But
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, for me, again, it was disturbing because it was also a eugenics piece to it. And, coming from myself of African ancestry, that was the way that they tried to describe our intelligence based on the width of the eyes from each other, how the size of the forehead. Eugenics, was also a part of this. Even the scientist even mentioned it himself, something about eugenics, trying to imply that, you can create the type of individual that you desire, which is what this whole thing was about, that they wanted to create the same thing with Frankenstein, even here, it's a real life, even in the United States. Eugenics has been going on for quite a number of years. Just recently, as 2016, they were sterilizing African American women, in the jails because they felt like the women who were in jail need not reproduce, because of their, they're saying that there was something innate in them, to breed more criminals. So I'm getting a lot from this. I'm getting, this, and then I'm also getting the spiritual aspect. I'm in quite a dilemma over here.
Bill Gates was accused of sterilizing Kenyan women. He was giving them what they thought was a vaccine, and It wasn't. We sterilized a lot of them. It's pretty disgusting.
I'm here in Canada, and we were one of the first places in the United States to do eugenics on people who were in mental institutions, you know, unabated.
Yeah.
You know, we would, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So Peter, regarding what you said, yeah, so from the materialistic point of view, they couldn't, because this Professor Preobrazhensky, he didn't use actually spiritual means, like he didn't, like he basically wanted to culture him, to bring him more culture, more manners, you know, to develop more of his personality, yeah, of his yeah, but
Yeah, it's rationalism, isn't it?
rationalism, yeah, yeah.
It's the scientific revolution gone mad. I mean, it is very, like Hattie said, it's very similar to the Frankenstein idea where we're creating. I mean, it's atheism, and that's what the Soviet Union was based on, and they still are to some extent in terms of stealing other technologies and very unoriginal. And really struggling with a backwardness in their technology. So yeah, I mean, this is these are dark times, and you know the guys that we studied, Gurdjieff, Ouspensky, Muraviev, all came out of this and escaped this this terrible regime. And so it's fascinating stuff on many levels. But the esoteric stuff to me is just it's a great commentary on it.
Yeah, and I think I actually like this place in the movie where they actually recognized that they cannot go against nature, like they have to work within, they called it within the lines of nature, but we could call it within the lines of God, you know, like you cannot go. And actually, when I was doing some research in terms of Gurdjieff's writing in relation to this movie, so Gurdjieff said he has this saying: when human reason realizes its limits, it recognizes the laws of nature. So when human reason realizes its limits, it recognizes the laws of nature. So they could kind of realize the limits of their own scientific things, and then so something that is bigger, they realize.
But they never do. They're still trying to do it today. They're still trying to stretch science beyond its capacity.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You're right, Hattie. Are people familiar with the concept of transhumanism? Are you familiar with that term?
I am.
Yeah, Franco, I thought you probably would be, Franco. I mean, this is a you know, something that's very big behind the scenes. I've been reading a book called Revolve by Aaron Franz. I think it's by and I think it's probably the most disturbing book I've ever read, to be honest. I mean, it was written about 7 or 8 years ago, I think, but I mean, it's so prophetic to what's happening at the moment. I mean, basically, transhumanism is the belief, I think it's almost like a religion to some of them, that you know, human beings as they aren't good enough, for want of a better phrase, and that we have to evolve to a higher level, which, you know, sounds a lot like the work, but they don't. It's touching on something that you mentioned there, Arik, that they don't see evolution as a spiritual thing. They see it as combining us with technology, you know, fusing flesh and blood with technology, and by doing that we can raise humanity to a higher level. But I mean, it's just, well, in my opinion, just junk science, you know. I mean, it's just terribly disturbing. But they want to do this. They want to chip us all. They want to, you know, it's really horrific. And the weird thing is, the really strange thing is, it's almost like they kind of half understand esotericism. That they seem to realize that man needs to evolve, but they don't really know the mechanism. So they do it in kind of a perverted way, you know. And they even seem to understand this concept of, you know, of the higher level, the male and female are one, you know. And again, they don't seem to understand how that works. And I think this is where a lot of this really strange stuff that's been happening in the last few years big push in this for the this trans movement and everything.
Right.
I think it's behind that. I think that's what's happening. That they're trying to blur the lines between male and female because they think that's how they're going to achieve this transformation. It's pretty horrific.
Yeah. It's kind of taking the ideas that has like high spiritual ideas that have the seed of the truth in them, but then perverting them and and using like hell like doing harm in the disguise of like helping and advancing, so that people can think that they are helping and advancing, but virtually they're going down. So that's
exactly. But it's a big movement, and it's it has a lot of money behind it and a lot of power behind it, and I think a lot of what seems very odd in recent years, I think, has been pushed from behind the scenes by these people. I'd recommend the book if anybody wants it, but it's not a pleasant read. It's keep you awake at night. It's Evolve. It's called by
and it actually started with the guys like this, like Professor Preobrazhensky, who because those things were real, like in Russia and probably and in Europe as well, like implanting different glands of animals to humans to rejuvenate, and then so it's the same line of thought. But then
Sorry, Arik. It's interesting. Have you got as far as reading Gnosis 3? I don't know if you Muraviev's volume 3.
No, I'm just in terms of Muraviev, I'm just following what we are doing in the group. I would love to get to that and to actually read the 3 volumes, but
because in the last, I think it's that, maybe Pete can remember, in the last chapter of volume 3, I think it is, he talks about this professor, I think it's Voronov. Is that correct, Pete?
Yes. It was actually the prototype. Like, people think that he was the prototype, like the model for this Professor Preobrazhensky.
Oh, is that right? You've heard of Voronov? Yeah, he and he talks about his experiments of grafting, and how, and I think he says something along the lines of, they were doomed to failure because he was trying to graft animal parts onto human beings, and it was an animal heart isn't the same as a human heart in esoteric terms. It functions at a different level of vibration, for want of a better phrase. So he said he got some, he would sometimes get an initial success. It would impart a certain energy to the particular organ, but it would always fail ultimately, these grafting experiments, because of that. And that Voronov wasn't aware of that limitation, that it could never really be successful. But it's very interesting that so I think clearly Muraviev was very familiar with these these concepts.
Yes, absolutely, and Michael, and if you were like at the place of Professor Preobrazhensky, how would you work with this creature in order to? So, do you think it might have been advanced, or it was doomed to failure?
Sorry, okay. I just repeat that question.
I'm asking if you were at the place of this Professor Preobrazhensky, how would you work with this creature? Do you think with Sharikov? Do you think it might have been advanced, or it was doomed to failure?
I think it was doomed to failure. It always is. I mean, you're trying to, play God. You can't. We're not in a position to do that. We don't have the knowledge. We don't have the knowledge. But there will always be people who will try that. Cloning and all sorts of things, which we. Well, it's, once again, it's very relevant, isn't it? Tampering with viruses, gain of function research. I mean, it should never happen. It should be banned, in my humble opinion. It's possible that gain of function research has created what's happened in the last 2.5 years, but we know why were people doing that in the first place? If that's what generated it, I don't know. That seems to be the most popular theory, and We should never ever have been doing it in the first place, you know.
Yes.
Playing God.
Yeah.
That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
If
So,
you get away from it being this experiment, at the beginning of the film, the chap, when he invited the dog in, and the professor, it seemed between him and the other doctor. The other doctor was more brutal. He gave beatings, and yet the other one never touched him physically, did he? Really, I don't recall him ever touching him. And he had this sort of more sort of gentle, no, you don't treat people like that, and what have you. And I'm just and then just later on, I was thinking, the words compassion and love came to mind. Where is that in this relationship with this creature? There didn't seem to be any going on there. Be it at the table. I mean, it reminded me of a child at a table, actually, because you have to train your children, you can't jump on the table, or you can't, there's a certain, bit by bit of certain decorum and what have you. But they just had no, they just seem to have no sort of understanding or as I say, any sort of compassion for this other. Okay, I guess maybe there was they despised it, maybe, in a sense. Maybe that was it. But yeah, that's what I think there was a lack of. And if you were, I guess, if you're just from my point of view, from where I've got with trying to use the work ideas, is that I accept that other people are going through the same, and that's what's given me compassion for other people, because I'm going through it, they're going through it, okay, and I'm trying to get through it, and maybe not everybody is it, but it gives you that sense of compassion for others. I think that was sort of seemed to be missing in that.
Yeah.
Well, I think this brings us right back around to the essence, because those two gentlemen, just as you rightly pointed out, they lacked those human emotions. To me, that's a requirement of anyone that would even dare to do those type of experiments, is they would have a lack of value for human life. That they were unable to ascertain the damage that they were doing to the dog, as well as to the man that they took the stuff from. It was just so demonic, in a sense.
Yeah.
In one of the articles that I read about it, it actually there was this idea, because this professor Preobrazhensky, he was against violence, like in his words, like he didn't want to touch the Sharikov and beat him and stuff like that. But actually, the surgery itself and other surgeries that he performed were quite violent. They were quite, so it was an act of violence. So yeah, so there was this idea also, one of the articles I read. Yeah.
So Peter, your question was, can man evolve? Is that your question?
Yeah. I mean, that's it. That's what we're doing. That's what esoteric science is all about. I mean, it really is it's not about the physical evolution, but it's about the spiritual evolution.
Yeah.
And the higher beings, and that's who Jesus was. So, that's the essence of what we do, and that's what at least is what I'm interested in. So, yeah.
Pete, you mentioned saints earlier. They make a pretty good, fist of it, don't they?
They do, and that's the thing about the Protestant church that I'm involved in, and I'm sure, Hattie, if you've been a missionary, you're involved in this. Protestants don't produce saints. Catholic Church does. The Orthodox Church absolutely has, and that's what we're trying to revive. Is this fourth way? Is really trying to figure out why that is, and what that is about, and how we do that. And in the midst of a civilization that is actually falling apart, you know, and we're in the midst of trying to revive these secrets that have been lost to Christianity. We're trying to revive those, and we're all of us on this this Discord channel are trying to figure out, pick up clues, you know, as to what is going on and how we do it. And those clues are sprinkled throughout Scripture, and there are layers and layers of meaning within Scripture itself that we're trying to decipher. So absolutely we can evolve. That's the thing. I've seen it. I've seen people evolve, and I've experienced people who have passed away physically but have continued to live on. And Charles Ashton, Robin Amos, those two are continuing to live on in another form somewhere. So this body that we're sometimes feel trapped in is not all there is. But these guys in this movie think that that's all there is, that the essence is in this physical world, you know. And by the way, if you want to jump down a rabbit hole, because I have no problem with conspiracy theories and jumping down and diving at all. One of my favorite books about all this stuff is Annie Jacobson's Operation Paperclip. And Annie Jacobson is an investigative journalist in Los Angeles, and she's written 4 really good books. And the best one is Operation Paperclip, and that is the investigation in terms of Nazi experiments and how after the war the Soviets and the Americans fought over these scientists, these Nazi scientists. And there's a lot of solid evidence in terms of these types of experiments that are in this movie that the Nazis did, and it's some pretty messed up stuff, and has a lot to do with unidentified flying objects and all kinds of stuff that make a lot of sense to me. So I could jump down those rabbit holes with the best of them. But I'm very, very just like you know, Mike and Frank and Eric and I are very cautious about what we do, where we jump. But Annie Jacobson, I would really highly recommend that. Mike, you were talking about some writers too, but she wrote another book called Area 51. They really are. I was reluctant to read it, but there's some fascinating stuff out there. You have to use your third eye, but it's out there.
Yeah. Can I just make a comment, another comment from about the movie and the comrades in the flat above him, and when not just that time, but this was the most poignant time for me, is that they were up there and the lights had gone out and they're holding candles, and you know, these are apparently, you know, communist atheists, okay, materialists, yet they're singing like they're in church. They've got ritual, you know.
Right.
Whereas that chap down below, he's like you said earlier, Arik, he's devoid of any of that. You know, that sort of rationalism, that coldness almost. And they had something, you know, that you know, community.
Yeah.
And ritual still. So I found that striking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was also thinking about the concept of, you might call it karma or cause and effect, because this professor was actually before Sharikov, he had been implanting different animal organs into humans and stuff like that. So pretty much it's not really an ethical deed. And then unknowingly, he got his response from, you know, from life, from the universe in the form of Sharikov. So basically, I think it depicts this. So you will get the response. Like you cannot do something that is against nature or against God and not to answer for that. You will get it. So, and he got it from a completely unexpected direction. Like that's the last thing he would expect to get. And so he got all this suffering. So I'm not sure he's going to continue with this kind of surgeries. What do you think, guys? Like after this lesson that he had learned, do you think he's going to continue like operating as usual and doing surgeries? I don't know. It might be interesting thing to think about whether he learned his lesson or not.
Being tormented, he was tormented by his deeds because the behavior of the creature was unbearable for him at most times.
Yeah, so could you repeat, because I think the quality of the sound is not the best.
Oh, I said that I think that for him, he was tormented by his act, because most of the time, he was in terror, of his behavior, how he was eating, how he was spitting on the floor, how he was trying to scratch himself with his mouth, and just the whole thing was horror for him.
Yeah, it's like he is a realization that he doesn't actually have the control he thinks.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, like most of the critics, they relate to this movie or this novel upon which is based as a satire on communism, because basically, like, that's Sharikov was the personality that communists wanted, basically. Like they promoted him, they supported him. So basically, that's the direction of most like most people who talk about this novel. They go in this direction of it being a satire on communism. Yeah, but in terms of our spiritual work, like, yeah, so those are the aspects I was thinking about, like cause and effect, karma, and essence, and personality, and like all the other things we discussed here.
Were they singing every time there was a victory in the war? It kind of seemed like there was a connection there. They would be saying something outside, then they would start singing a song.
Like you mean the content of their songs?
No, the timing of their songs.
No, those are just revolutionary songs, kind of songs they sang at that time, that we are going to fight and win, and we'll have difficulties, we'll go through the difficulties on the way. So that's kind of songs they sang at that time.
But yes, it seemed like that when something was going on in the background, when something would happen, that's when they would burst into a song.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it'd be good to sort of, it's one of those ones, I think, to watch again, to look for other pieces like that, I think, because there may be something there actually, Hattie.
Yeah, we'll post the link below the video. And yeah,
it made me think of, I know when I was in Liberia, I first went there during the civil crisis, and the songs that they would sing, and not just the songs, but the intensity of the songs. And I think someone mentioned it, maybe Mike or Frank, they were almost angelic in the way that they would, pitch the note and the tune. Everybody would be like a, mass choir, for the symphony or something. They just really sang from their heart. And I saw that same thing, with the Liberians during the civil crisis. And then after that time passed, you can't get them to sound like that again. So it has, I was thinking of that as I was listening to them sing. As someone said, they sounded so fabulous. I said, oh, that's a sound of pain. That's a sound of terror, of fear, of wanting hope, of wanting something to latch onto, even though maybe your words may not be that, but the melody that's coming out of your heart, that is what it is saying.
Right. Yeah, at that time, lots of people did believe in those ideas. So they actually wholeheartedly gave themselves to those ideas, including all those rituals, including singing and everything. Yeah, it was kind of their faith or their religion, you might say,
Well, let's not forget they turned their back on Orthodox Christianity there, didn't they, at the time? So,
Mm-hmm.
and actually Putin tried to turn that round, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, maybe the rituals themselves, kind of the outer form, was still alive there, because it quite resembles what they did with the candles and stuff like that. It quite resembles it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Arik, when was the novel written? What year?
It was written, if I'm not mistaken, in 1925 or something like that. And actually,
Right,
it was prohibited, so it was only published in in Russia itself. It was published abroad, but in Russia itself, it was published in 1987. And 1 year later, this movie was done. And actually, I have to tell you something. I lived in Russia up to 1990, so I have to disclose a little secret. I participated in this movie, actually. It was not the reason I showed it to you, but I participated in this scene in a circus. I was one of the public. I was then I was then maybe 13 years old or something like that. So they just it was an opportunity to earn some money and to do something interesting. So they told us to kind of wear old-fashioned clothes and come at a particular hour to a certain place, and then I just spent most of the day there, and they spent filming this scene. So I have special sentiment. And then when I watched it the first time, well, many years ago, I thought I recognized myself there in the audience, but I watched it a few times after that, and I didn't. So I'm not sure about that, but I did participate in that scene in the circus.
Famous.
So yeah, but that absolutely wasn't the reason I chose it, because I think it has lots of deep ideas, and actually, if you wanna listen to the novel itself, in English, in the English translation on Audible, they have a very, very good version on it, narrated in a very, very well narrated, and there are few details in the novel that are not in the movie, I think, but the movie pretty much follows the novel. So, yeah, so.
I don't know much of the background at all, Arik. Is the novelist, was still living in Russia at the time he wrote it?
Yeah, and actually he was supposed to immigrate, but he became sick, and you can actually, his name is Mikhail Bulgakov. He is quite famous Russian writer. He became sick, so he couldn't leave Russia. He remained there, and he found himself that at some point that most of his novels were basically prohibited. So they didn't put them on stage in theaters and stuff like that. But then I think he had some kind of special protection from Stalin, and at some point they did start to put his novels on stage, like in theaters. But this particular one, it wasn't published in Russia. So up until the perestroika, like the period of changes.
So he wasn't persecuted or anything. He wasn't.
No, he wasn't. But many of his friends were. Like he was quite famous actually in Russia. So I think maybe that was one of the reasons they didn't touch him. But many of his friends, other writers, they were persecuted. Yeah, and pretty much. And this particular novel relates to the period of 1920s, but the huge wave of the persecution and repressions from Stalin, it actually it came about 10 years later than that. So I think if it were about 10, maybe a little bit like something 12, 15 years later than this particular period depicted in the movie, maybe they would just, Professor Preobrazhensky and all the other guys, like the representatives of old Russia, maybe they wouldn't be there anymore. Like maybe they would be abroad or persecuted. At least big part of them might have been like that.
Maybe though, that's the professor, because he he is connected, isn't he? And he's not persecuted.
Yeah.
Is he? Just like the writer, as you say, the writer. So he was famous enough to not be persecuted. So yeah, I wonder whether there's a little parallel. And I can see the anti-communism thing actually as well, because of you say about the proletariat and that he created this creature. This creature, and actually he was anti-proletariat at the beginning, wasn't he? He didn't have anything good to say about the proletariat, was he? Yet he created one, and then he well, more or less destroyed it again, didn't he?
Yeah. And actually, I read quite a lot, quite extensively preparing this presentation. So that there was this idea that the old Russian intelligentsia, which means like upper class, they actually created. So there was this line, probably the writer also meant it. They actually, before the revolution, they were really sympathizing with the working class. So they kind of created those Sharikovs that came after that in the form of the revolution. So there is this line there, like this professor, which is kind of a representative of old Russian high society. He creates this Sharikov, and it's pretty much goes in parallel with this idea that the old Russian high society, many of them were sympathizing with, in the beginning, initially with the revolutionaries and this kind of people. So there is this line of thought there as well.
That's interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, guys. Okay, guys. So I think we are going to wrap it up. It's 1 a.m. now here in Israel. So, Mariam, do you have anything to say?
No, thank you. I only want to say thank you for the very, very nice film. I learned a lot of all that all of you said. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So before we wrap it up, do you have anything to say? Anything else to share?
No, thank you so much, Arik, for doing this. Wonderful job, as usual. Good job.
Thank you so much, Pete. And so I'm going to ask you, I'm going to send you the file with all the recordings, and then we can upload it on the channel and put the link to the movie itself below, as usual, for people to watch.
Sounds good.
Okay, guys, so have a blessed day, and it was my pleasure. And thank you so much.
All right, we'll see you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Really appreciate it, Arik. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.